Can you walk into Natural or Island Naturals, slam it down in front of Abe and say, I can get these for you every single week for the next year, you know? And then he looks at it, boy, is that wilty? I don't even want it. You know, that lettuce, but it's got a lot of spots on it. Is it marketable? And the biggest, most important one that I can think of, is it unique? And will it raise an interest? Okay? If you are growing hydroponic, aquaponic lettuce on this island, chances are you don't have a unique product. Nor does it really raise an interest because everybody's doing it. You can get aquaponic lettuce anywhere. It's a flooded market. You can maybe get $1 to $2 a pound when in fact, you know, there's some guys that are doing that and they're selling the hotels, they're selling them for $12, $13 a pound. It's like, can you even get in on that market? I don't know. It's been around a long time. So, is it marketable? Was it raise interest? And is it unique? Okay. How many folks on this island are growing mangosteen professionally or like as an exclusive crop? One. You know how much that guy makes a year? Makes close to $1 million a year selling mangosteen. And it's only a season, what is the season? July through September? He exports all of it to Japan. It all goes out to Japan. And he makes an incredible amount of money. Guy's on Oahu. And what he did was he sold small-time crops for the first 13 years while his trees matured. And he did all kinds of stuff where he sold cover crop seeds, he does all kinds of things, but now he has his mangosteen, his trees are mature, and he just boxes them up, wraps each one in a little piece of paper, puts it in a box, and with 12 of them, it sends that box off to Japan, gets $250 for the box. So, is it unique? Okay. Are you meeting a demand, and is it something that's not typically available on this island? We'll go through one of the write-ups that I have, which is a terrific book put together by Ken Love, the fruit guru of Big Island, and he has created, he did a write-up of 12 different crops that he found, tree crops that he found would be potentially profitable in Hawaii and would certainly meet a market. And he breaks down a lot of the numbers and stuff. It'll blow your mind when I show it to you basically what like figs can make. He breaks it down. You can make $2,000 per tree if you grow figs correctly and it grows in your environment. And not too many people are doing figs, and you can do local organic figs and charge whatever you want, and people will buy them. And is that an option for you? So we'll go through that when we talk about that section. Everybody got that trick question? Who wants to answer? What is the difference between hydroponics and aquaponics? What is the benefit, one benefit or negative of each? Anybody know the difference between the two?
Hydroponics is in water, and you use different fertilizers in there. Aquaponics is with fish, where you keep fish and then it's fertilizer. I don't know what is aeroponics.
Okay. I'll read what I have. Hydroponics, not necessarily in water. What it is using a soilless media and a nutrient-rich solution meaning it is in water, but not always. But typically, 99.9% of the time, we're talking about a plant being grown in a pot that doesn't have any dirt. Of course, you never hear me say the word dirt. I only say it this once. I'm a soil scientist. I call it soil. So it's not grown in soil.
It's like a foam-like.
You could do rock wool. Sometimes folks will grow in clay pellets. Sometimes folks will grow just in shredded paper, which is very sterile, and many different kinds of media. Some people use coconut coir and all different things. Okay, so that's a nutrient solution and a soilless media. That's hydroponics. Okay, one of the, I guess the benefits of hydroponics is plants grow incredibly fast when you're talking about compared to in the soil. So a tomato plant can mature within 6 weeks in hydroponics and can get up to 8 to 12 weeks in the soil, just for an example. Okay. There's a general lack of disease because you're able to monitor the health of the plant. If you give the plant everything it needs and there's disease flying all over the place, it won't get the disease because it's strong enough to resist a lot of the diseases. So hydroponics causes a plant to be incredibly healthy, which kind of battles down the issue of disease. Okay. What else do I have? Plant growth, and then generally speed. That's just a couple of the benefits. There's hundreds of them. One of the negative effects or negative aspects of hydroponics is energy cost. Okay, a lot of the systems, if you're talking about flow systems, they use a lot of pumps, and most times the pumps can't run off solar, so it's usually a general energy cost. You can do the raft systems where there is no circulating, but then how are you going to get that water in there in the first place? You're going to have to use pumps or something at some point. How are you safely going to remove the effluent water? When you talk about hydroponics, sometimes the solution can become very toxic and dangerous and overused, and there's a lot of hydrocarbons left over inside the solution. And after a while, when you switch your solutions out, you have to safely dispose of that material. So that's another bad part about it, is there's usually a disposal issue with a lot of the hydroponics. Most hydroponic farmers I know, they just dump into the ground when they're done, and that is bad, 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 bad. So you're putting hydrocarbons into the soil. Those things, they don't react to anything. They literally go down through the soil until they hit groundwater, and then they sit in the groundwater and build and build and build until the nitrogen bonds with it, and then you have things like blue baby syndrome, and you have nitrogen toxicity, and it's just an awful, awful thing. So don't contribute to that if you're a hydroponic farmer, and be sure that you dispose of your stuff safely, which can be very costly and yada yada. So that's kind of a bad thing about it. Materials cost. It takes a lot of materials to grow hydroponics. You need the rafts, you need the bins to put it in. Usually you need some sort of a hoop house or something to cover them. It's just incredibly expensive, and that means you need a lot of capital to start off with if you want to do hydroponics. You can work your way up, but if we're talking about a business itself, we're talking about a business loan, there's no way to trickle into a hydroponics business. You really have to come in full-fledged with all your material at once, because it's the only cost-effective way of starting a hydroponic business, is to be able to buy all those materials at once at a discounted rate, because you're buying it in bulk. Then you have to ship it over here. Shipping 4 or 5 containers to Hawaii with your equipment can be very, very detrimental to your finances. So lots of materials. There's lots of maintenance involved, whether it be checking on your plants for insects and all that stuff, but also watching the pumps, watching algae levels, watching, like I said, hydrocarbons and the pH, the salinity. So it's a lot of work. And in a lot of systems, either the whole crop or sections of the crop are connected through kind of a flow system. So what happens if Phytophthora ends up in your water for this whole row that goes down your acre of land? Yeah? One little spore goes in there, boom, it just starts multiplying in anaerobic conditions, and then spreads throughout your entire tray and all the way down your row for your whole acre, and then you have Phytophthora in the whole thing. So that's a negative thing when it comes to hydroponics, is the whole thing's kind of connected. So you can kind of battle that by cutting off sections and kind of dividing up and, I guess, padding them out. But even then, still, you might lose a quarter of your crop all at once because that bin has Phytophthora or some disease in it. Okay? Aquaponics is a symbiotic cultivation of plants and aquatic animals in a recirculating environment. That's the difference. So we're talking about, it's basically hydroponics, but instead of fertilizer solutions, we are using effluent water. We're using poop juice from fish or whatever aquatic animal that we're deciding to use. Okay, some people use prawns and shrimp and all that stuff. Now, it is a recirculating environment. Okay, you can't have a stagnant system or a raft system where there's no flow through the system with aquaponics. You can do it on a small scale, but if you're talking about actually starting up a business where you have customers purchasing products week after week, you really need to have a whole flow system. Good things. It can be a closed system, meaning you don't have to add any fertilizers. You do have to add food to feed the fish, but you can also grow your own food to feed the fish, which is what a lot of aquaponics folks will do. Okay? So that's a kind of a plus or a minus, depends on how you look at it. You have count them, two marketable products with aquaponics. You have your crop and you have fish or shrimp or whatever the heck you're growing with it. So you can actually double your income if you're selling tilapia in addition to selling your lettuce. Okay? There's no cost nutrition other than the food, like I said. And so for bad things as far as aquaponics go, energy costs, like I said, for a hydroponics, same thing. Materials costs, maintenance. The whole crop is connected. And there's an issue of human health. Okay? One of my least favorite places on Oahu, I won't tell you the name of the farm, in Waimanalo, aquaponics place, permaculture joint. What they do is they preach a pretty mean game. They get tours to come out there to their place, and they show people all their aquaponic systems and how wonderful it is and how they're making their crops all pretty, and then the guys leave, and then what do they do at the end of the day? They take their effluent water that's overflow and they put it right into the Waimanalo Creek, okay, which is not illegal. They put it right into the creek, and then E. coli measurements going all the way down the creek from up to the top of the mountain, going all the way through my property where I lived, and then all of a sudden his place, after that, E. coli levels are off the charts, okay? EPA comes into his place, searches his entire tanks, everything looking for E. coli, can't find any. But right after his property, E. coli levels are right off the charts. They can't do anything about it because he doesn't technically have the E. coli. Well, the E. coli could easily live right in the creek, right outside of his place, living off of the nutrients that he's pumping into the... It might naturally occur, but he's certainly adding to the problem and then causing them to multiply. And then all the way down the creek, you have E. coli problems. So health issues. E. coli, spreading of all that stuff. If your effluent water gets into a waterway, it certainly is a health issue. Also, effluents, eventually you get an overfill with your filters of fish poop and all that stuff. What do you do with it? Can you dispose of it correctly? And that can be costly. Okay? Who wants to try the next one? Anybody? No. Okay. Oh, I didn't get to aeroponics. Is aeroponics even on this? No. Oh, really? I don't have it on mine. Aeroponics. Aeroponics is the same as hydroponics, but instead of liquid water solution going across roots, it's actually vapor. The moisture level is increased, and the roots of those plants will actually hang in air and not in water. And then they use a atomizer to create tiny little particles of water, which turns into water vapor within the container. That water vapor is rich with nutrients and will actually cling right onto the roots as they hang in the little container. And then, so there's actually no water transfer at all. It's just water vapor. It's very expensive to do. There's a reason why people do it, because the crops that come out of aeroponics are fantastic. They are the most healthy tomatoes you've ever seen in your life. It was developed by NASA to grow crops in space. And they found that it's pretty effective. Super expensive. Okay? To the point where it's not even economical to do most situations. But it's certainly something to look into if you're interested in it. Really fascinating. Yeah, if you're going to Mars or live in Puna. All right, so the reason why it's awesome is because you need about a cup full of water to inoculate or to, I guess, get moisture to the roots of many, many, many crops. So where there's gallons and gallons of water is used in hydroponics, it's actually a very small amount of water that is used in aeroponics. Brings your cost way down as far as the water goes, but the equipment and the overhead and the maintenance is incredibly time-consuming and expensive. Number 8, What government agencies help with funding material sources for farmers who wish to practice best practices? Yes, they do, as you mentioned, the OHDHHL. But when we're talking about government agencies that are funding materials, we're talking about USDA, Farm Services Agency, the FSA, and the NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation Society. Or is it Service? Conservation Service. Okay, these three are federal organizations that get billions and billions of dollars to help farmers. And they have programs for lending where you can get a loan on an operation loan to expand your farm, buy some equipment, set up a new processing facility, or even get a loan for a new farm if you want to expand your business and get another farm that is not under DHHL. Some folks really think that that's great to have both. Let's see, FSA does the loans. NRCS does programs like helping you put up fencing. They'll help you with those piggery that I mentioned. They'll help with the cost of building the piggeries. They'll talk about getting pigs off your land. They talk about invasive weeds. They'll come out and help you get rid of invasive weeds. NRCS is easily the most important relationship I think that local farmers can make with any federal organization of any kind. Okay, they're there to help. They're not bad people. Like some of the folks at USDA aren't very, very popular. NRCS is the good side of the USDA. They really are. They're there to help. They will help you build soil and help you create soil so that on your land where there is no soil, that they can help you build a plan so that over the next 6, 7, 8 years that you will have 8 inches of soil by the time you're done. Sure, it's 8 years, but you created and built that soil off materials that you got for free. I mean, how awesome is that? Instead of trucking it in from Kona. So they can help you with all those things. Okay? This next question doesn't actually apply to the agriculture skills portion of the class. It actually talks about it comes from the business side. But I really want you to understand about grants because I have a lot of folks that come in and their big plan is to ask for a grant. And it's a good approach to try, but it takes an awful lot of time and effort. The reason why grants are incredibly difficult to get is because they're sticklers about what they're looking for, and if you don't meet those requirements, your application, no matter how hard you worked on it, gets thrown away or gets evaluated and denied. So the question is, what percentage of grant applicants receiving initial funding for small business? Okay, we're talking about small business loans. This isn't non-for-profit. We're not talking about any native situations. We're talking strictly for small businesses. Okay, the answer is 10% of the people that apply for grants get their first grant. Okay? Now, continuing funding, which is the only way to survive on a granting system. Sure, you get a grant once and they get you started, but sometimes they'll just leave you in the dust because your program didn't meet their criteria that they wanted and you just spent 5 years working on something that they decide doesn't work, when in fact you might know it works if you got a couple more years. You ask for an extension. How many people that ask for extension actually get those grants out of the total amount of applicants? 1 to 3%. Okay? So when I talk about grants on the business side of the class, which I'm just going to barely touch on, you can tell by my attitude towards it, it's a waste of time when you're talking about a small business. Okay? Not necessarily when you're talking about native farmers and you're talking about women farmers, okay? Because most of the grants that get handed out for small businesses in Hawaii go out to programs that are native-based, education-based, and they're owned by women, okay? So, I hate that word minority because this, as of 2 weeks ago, just became officially the minority of the United States. This right here. So, that word just doesn't mean anything anymore. So, I want you to know, grants are not necessarily the answer when it comes to small business. Getting your butt out there, doing what you need to do, and being passionate about your business, that's the only way to do it. Okay? What is a inoculated deep litter system? Go ahead and pull out that handout I gave you. That is the piggery. That's Michael DuPont's system. That is the deep litter system. That is the pig system that will blow your mind when we go and check it out with the lack of smell, lack of flies. It is absolutely amazing. I gave you that handout because I want you to read it through so that when we go to the field trip next week, you'll understand what we're going to go see. Okay? I also included how to cultivate indigenous microorganisms. This is natural farming techniques. Okay, this is making IMOs and all that stuff. It associates really, really closely with Michael's stuff, so I want you to read that as well. If you have any questions about this stuff, this is what I do my thesis on. This is what I do with my life, is natural farming. So when we talk about unconventional farming techniques, I usually take their techniques to a higher level. Okay? Most of the materials that I use for natural farming are indigenous. They're from here. I don't use mill run. And I don't use sugar made in Mexico and Costa Rica. Okay? All the materials that I use personally are adaptive, as in they're from Big Island. So there's going to be a lot of stuff described in there where you need some materials that are off island. Just know that there's options for you to make that more cost effective and much more sustainable. Okay? Just talk to me. I'll talk all day about natural farming. Okay? So it's a system developed in Hawaii that utilizes a simulated forest floor as the floor of livestock pens. So it's simulating what naturally happens out in nature. The microorganisms that are in that environment are then simulated in the piggery, and the swift breakdown and decomposition you see in forests is the same thing that's playing with the pigs. We have the same amount of microorganisms in the pig pen as we do on the forest floor. And decomposition happens that fast. Okay. Number 11, who wants to try it? Anybody want to try it? Otherwise, I'll keep going.
Organic, no pesticides. By natural farming, no pesticides, no herbicides, using natural material.
I'll give you what I got. Natural farming. This is my description. Okay, it's an agriculture technique that utilizes cultured indigenous microorganisms. Cultured meaning go out into the environment and you actively select certain kinds of microorganisms, fungus and bacteria specifically, and then you also use those indigenous microorganisms in conjunction with fermented plant materials. So I'll take agriculture byproducts, some weedy materials, whatever it may be, and I'll use those in certain ways to create a fermented product, fermented using microorganisms, okay, yeasts and all kinds of fungus to cause a chemical reaction in the material so that it creates a material that I'm looking to use. Typically what I'm doing when I'm fermenting plant materials is making things plant available or water soluble. So what I'll do is I'll take a plant material, and through the process of fermentation, I will actually suck out all of the nutrients and the auxin and the hormones and all that stuff out of the plant material, harvest it into a liquid form, and then use it into the field as a amendment. So everything that I use in natural farming is available on the farm, so you don't have to go out and leave your property to be able to run your farm. Okay, that's
same thing as breaking down fish for fertilizer.
Yeah, so we do fermented fish or like fish emulsion. We do that in natural farming. A little bit different than what you're used to. Most will chop up the fish and then ferment that in itself. I typically will use sugar and osmotic pressure to, just like when you take sugar and you mix it with strawberries, right? Chop up some strawberries, put a little sugar in there, and you put it in the fridge for overnight. What happens? It turns like all soupy and sticky, and the wonderful red strawberries don't have a red color anymore. They're all white, right? And all the redness and all the sugar and the beta carotenes and everything are in the liquid and not in the strawberries themselves. Well, what happens there is the sugar essentially causes a pressure gradient and sucks out all the moisture, all the coloring, all the good stuff out of the plant. I do essentially the same thing with plant materials. I use sugars and osmotic pressure is what it's called. But I can describe that throughout the class. We will, like I said, I'll have a natural farming module at the end. And I'll break this down over the course of 3 classes. Okay? Natural farming, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it uses fermented plant materials and indigenous microorganisms as a plant and soil amendment, meaning you can use it directly onto the surface of the plant, or you can use it directly into the soil. In an effort to increase beneficial biological populations, the goal of natural farming is to use biology to your advantage. Most conventional farming, it's kill, 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 right? Get the fungus out of there, kill those bugs, get all that stuff out. Natural farming is the complete opposite, to the point where I put so much biology in my soil, so many microorganisms that not one disease can actually become dominant. That there's so many, they're all packed in there like this. No one can move. Only the ones that function in that environment have some free will and move. Okay? So where most farmers will try to kill, 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 I'm just all about biology. Add more and more and more biology. Where a farmer might spray the outside of his plant with an antifungal spray, I'll actually collect different kinds of fungus and bacteria and spray that onto the plant. Because I know that the ones that I've collected and cultured will force the bad ones out and then stand there waiting for more to come so that it can defend the plant. It's all about knowing that each one of those microorganisms that are in this world, they all have a function. There's 16 trillion, estimated 16 trillion different species. We don't even know, because when we're talking about 16 trillion, we're counting the oceans as well. I mean, there's fungus that live in the bottom of the ocean 6 miles down. Fungus in the seawater next to, all these different vents and stuff. It's really amazing stuff. So just know that each microorganism has a function and that you can learn how to use their functions to your advantage. Okay?